More migrants expected in Chicago, with reports indicating several more buses on the way from the southern U.S. border after crossing the border and either declaring asylum or just crossing illegally. And the costs are mounting. But when they arrive, especially those who come this winter, they're going to be greeted with military-grade tents. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson apparently making that clear to individual aldermen in a briefing that they held on Friday. We talked a bit about this as well yesterday in just the context of overall costs, which is mounting. $250 million is what it's expected to cost before the end of the year. That's taxpayer costs, and that's not to include the subsidies that Illinois taxpayers are paying for migrant health care over the age of 65. But you've got a headline here: Biden administration can't locate over 177,000 immigrants. According to an Inspector General report, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security released more than 1.3 million illegal immigrants under federal law into the United States from March 2021 through when now. At least that's the official number. Those are the ones that they were able to process. What about the ones that got away? Obviously, some seeing that number is probably much, much higher. But some of the non-citizens in Chicago facing a variety of challenges, not just, living in police stations and soon to be living in military-grade tents. You've got arrests being made of some of the migrants as well. There was a story yesterday that we shared of a mother, non-citizen, who was blocking traffic and arrested eventually. Well, more details have come out about that, with reporting done indicating that the migrant wanted to use the police station's restroom with her child and was prohibited from doing so, and then caused a disturbance and ultimately being arrested. But we've got this other story here as well. Migrant barbers arrested and ticketed for cutting hair without license in downtown. This is coming from Block Club Chicago, a group of asylum seekers who set up a barbershop in Pritzker Park. That's interesting. Were forced to stop offering cuts when they were arrested and cited for operating an illegal business. Here in Illinois, you got to get a license. In Chicago, you got to get a license to do certain things like, hairstyling or being a barber. You've got to pay your fee. If not, then you're operating an illegal business. And that's apparently what these non-citizens were doing in the park, providing haircuts. And reporting indicates that they were just looking for a way to make some money to feed themselves and also send money back to their families. But they were arrested and handcuffed and ultimately charged with, possibly a $250 violation, according to city code up in Chicago. So you've got that happening as well, where, the idea of military-grade fences, not fences, but military-grade tents going to be used. This was a statement from Chicago Alderman Andre Vasquez, he released on Friday, saying that earlier in the day, the Chicago City Council was briefed on the mayor's plan to establish military-grade tent base camps in order to decompress police stations whose floors are where over 1,500 asylum seekers are sleeping tonight, as they have for months. As we get more details, we'll share with our neighbors, but what is clear is that all neighborhoods will need to share responsibility in addressing the moment. So you can hear some of the concern there and getting the community ready for this. But Alderman Vasquez also goes on to say, in my capacity as chair of the Committee on Immigrant and Refugee Rights, I'm committed to making sure that we provide the necessary transparency and accountability with regard to the decisions made by the administration. In that spirit, the committee has launched welcometochicago.org, where neighbors can get data and information as it is received. So let's go ahead and take a look if we can pull that up here, welcometochicago.org, and what that has to say. Welcometochicago.org, and pull that up. Let's get it going here. Live radio. Gotta love it. Come on, Bishop. Do some better show prep, for crying out loud. Yeah, I do all my own show prep, by the way. I mean, scheduling of guests and the switching and the stack of research and so on. All right, so let's pull this up here. Welcome to Chicago.org, your resource for the Chicago migrants and refugee rights. So it's got a dashboard. What do we got here? Committee on Immigrant and Refugee Rights, how to participate, immigration and immigration policy in Chicago, new arrivals. Talks about how 13,500 asylum seekers have arrived since August of 2022. In a short period of time, forced migration from Texas has created localized humanitarian crisis in Chicago. Goes on to talk about some of the data here, new arrivals of Chicago shelters. And you've got staging areas, and just zooming out here, and you got data sets as well. So you can see here the ramp up of various migrants living in various areas, from the police stations to a social club to the Daily College. You got Midway Airport. How many people are in Midway Airport? It's the dark green. You've got about 252. That's a Daily College. At various other places, police departments, 1,500. You've got the Inn of Chicago, about 1,500. You've got a social club, about 1,100. So you can see here just how much it's ramped up in the number of migrants in various places that they are staying. So this will be a good resource for people, especially up in Chicago, to take a look at and determine just how much of a, quote, crisis this is. It is Springfield's morning news on WMAY, so obviously you've got concerns over the cost. You've got concerns over the humanitarian issues. I mean, living in a tent, even if it's a military-grade base camp tent, that itself is, it's going to start looking like, I would imagine, some people seeing it as concentration camps. I know that's a term that has a negative connotation, obviously, for reasons we all know, but it's concentrating the non-citizen population into tents. So this is obviously something that's growing of more concern, and even Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson in the past has indicated that things will get worse if they don't get any assistance from the federal government, not just in cost, but you've got others, including in New York, where they're decrying the lack of attention on this from the Biden administration, with New York Mayor Eric Adams also raising concern about the overall cost and how he says they're going to have to cut some parts of the budget to make up for this, because it's going to cost, I think, the indication was several $billions by the end of the next fiscal year in New York. I think it was like $12 billion or something to that effect. Regardless, in Chicago, the cost by the end of this year expected to be $250+ million, and that's just for housing and food and shelter and clothes, not to consider the cost of migrant health care that taxpayers in Illinois are subsidizing. So again, if you want to delve more into the data that Alderman Andre Vasquez has released, you can check that out at welcometoschicago.org. It's also 40thward.org, and you can see the dashboard with all kinds of data sets for you to determine just exactly where these non-citizens are being housed throughout Chicago. They're soon going to have to make a special section on this chart for new arrivals in Chicago shelters and staging areas to include the military-grade base camp tents. So there you go, Chicago. Where is this going to proliferate? Is it going to hit some of the suburbs? How are suburban mayors going to react to this? What about even further downstate? Are we going to see something here in Springfield? We've already got a homeless situation in Springfield. Could that be compounded if, by any stretch, migrants are being transported from Chicago to, say, Springfield or Decatur or Peoria or Joliet or anywhere else, Rockford, or anywhere else throughout the state? So we'll be keeping an eye on this as well here on